The Varnock facility loomed before them, a fortress of jagged metal and glowing red lights. Nathan's team moved silently through the shadows, their cloaking devices rendering them nearly invisible. Every step was calculated, every breath held to avoid detection. The air inside the structure was cold, filled with the hum of machinery and the distant echo of alien voices. Emma led the way, her eyes scanning the holographic map on her wrist, while Jake kept watch, his weapon ready. They reached the heart of the facility, a cavernous chamber housing the superweapon. It was even larger than they had anticipated, its core pulsing with an ominous energy. "This is it," Emma whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "If we can disable the power source, the whole thing will shut down." She pointed to a control panel embedded in the wall nearby. "I'll need 5 minutes to hack into the system." Nathan nodded, taking position beside her. "Jake, keep an eye out for patrols. We don't have much time." As Emma worked, her fingers flying over the keypad, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Their cover had been blown. Red warning lights flashed, bathing the room in a sinister glow. "They know we're here," Jake shouted, firing at approaching Varnock soldiers. Nathan joined him, his weapon steady as he aimed for the enemy's weak points. Emma didn't stop, her focus unshaken despite the chaos around her. "Almost done," she called out, sweat dripping from her brow. The seconds felt like hours as the team fought desperately to hold off waves of attackers. Just when it seemed they wouldn't make it, Emma let out a triumphant cry. "Got it," she yelled, slamming her fist onto the console. The weapon's core sputtered, then went dark, its menacing glow fading into silence. But their victory was short-lived. Reinforcements poured into the chamber, cutting off their escape route. Nathan glanced at his team, seeing the same determination mirrored in their eyes. "We're not done yet," he said firmly. With no other option, they made a run for it, dodging fire and using every trick they knew to stay alive. Back aboard their ship, the crew prepared for extraction. Jake piloted the vessel with unmatched skill, weaving through Varnock fighters that pursued them relentlessly. Bullets tore through the hull, sparks flying as systems failed one by one. "Hold on," Jake shouted, pushing the engines to their limit. Finally, they broke free, leaving the enemy behind in a trail of smoke and debris. When they returned to Earth, the galaxy erupted in celebration. News of the destroyed superweapon spread quickly, hailed as a turning point in the fight against the Varnock. Humanity's role in the mission earned them newfound respect, proving they were not reckless warmongers but capable defenders of peace. Maya Reynolds stood alongside Admiral Carter and General Liam Bennett during a press conference, addressing crowds across the stars. "This victory belongs to all of us," she declared. "It shows what we can achieve when we stand together." For Nathan and his team, the aftermath was quieter, but no less meaningful. They attended memorials for those who had fallen, honoring Cale and countless others whose sacrifices had paved the way. Nathan found solace in knowing their efforts hadn't been in vain. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged stronger, not because of wrath, but because of resilience, courage, and unity. In the weeks that followed, the Galactic Council reconvened to formalize humanity's place among the stars. Maya took her seat as Earth's representative, vowing to advocate for cooperation over conflict. Under her leadership, alliances strengthened, and plans were made to ensure the galaxy would never again face such a threat unprepared. As Nathan looked up at the night sky, now brighter with hope, he felt a sense of pride. Humanity's journey was far from over, but for the first time, the future seemed full of promise. Together, they had proven that even in the vastness of space, no challenge was insurmountable, as long as they stood united. The days following the Council's decision were a whirlwind of activity. Humanity had been granted conditional permission to participate in galactic defense efforts, but the victory felt bittersweet. Nathan Hayes stood on the deck of a newly commissioned human ship, staring out at the stars. The vessel was sleek and powerful, a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. Yet, as he looked around at his team, Emma Lewis poring over tactical maps, Jake Monroe checking the ship's systems. He couldn't shake the weight of everything they had lost along the way. Cal's sacrifice weighed heavily on all of them. Though none of them had known him for long, his bravery had left a lasting mark. He had given up everything to help strangers, believing in a future where species could work together instead of tearing each other apart. "We owe it to him," Nathan said quietly, breaking the silence. Emma glanced up from her work, nodding in agreement. "And to everyone else who's counting on us," she added, her voice firm. Meanwhile, Maya Reynolds continued her fight, not with words this time, but with action. The Galactic Council had offered her a seat as humanity's representative, a role she accepted with both pride and caution. She knew the position came with immense responsibility, and she was determined to use it wisely. Her first act was to propose forming alliances with neutral species, urging them to join forces against the Varnak threat. "Strength lies in unity," she told the Council during one session. "If we stand divided, the Varnak will pick us off one by one." General Liam Bennett and Admiral Carter worked tirelessly to rebuild humanity's military presence under the Council's new guidelines. It wasn't easy. Every decision required approval, every strategy subjected to scrutiny. But they adapted, finding ways to balance accountability with autonomy. Slowly, trust began to grow, not just between humans and the Council, but among different species as well. As preparations for the next phase of the conflict intensified, Nathan's team prepared for their most important mission yet, locating and disabling the Varnak superweapon before it could be completed. Intelligence suggested the weapon was being assembled in a hidden facility deep within Varnak territory. The mission would be dangerous, requiring stealth, precision, and teamwork. Failure wasn't an option. On the eve of their departure, Nathan gathered his team for a final briefing. They sat in a small, dimly lit room aboard the ship, exhaustion etched on their faces, but resolve burning in their eyes. "This is it," Nathan said, his voice steady. "Everything we've done has led to this moment. If we succeed, we save not just humanity, but the entire galaxy." Emma leaned forward, tapping a glowing map projected onto the table. "Here's the plan," she began, outlining their approach. They would infiltrate the facility using cloaking technology, sabotage key components of the weapon, and escape before reinforcements arrived. It sounded simple enough, but they all knew better than to underestimate the Varnak. Jake cracked a grin, trying to lighten the mood. "Piece of cake," he joked, though no one laughed. The stakes were too high for humor. Instead, they focused on the task ahead, running through contingencies and ensuring every detail was accounted for. When the meeting ended, Nathan found himself alone on the observation deck once more. He thought about Haven 7, about Alex and all the others who hadn't made it this far. Their sacrifices fueled his determination, reminding him why he couldn't give up now. As the ship drifted silently through space, he made a silent promise to honor those who had fallen, to protect those still alive, and to prove that humanity's wrath was matched only by its capacity for hope. The journey to Varnak territory was long and tense, but the team remained focused. When they finally reached their destination, the facility loomed ahead, a massive structure bristling with defenses. For a moment, doubt crept into Nathan's mind. Could they really pull this off? Then he looked at his team, at the unshakable bond they shared, and knew the answer. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. The evidence Nathan's team had uncovered, the schematics of the Varnak superweapon and Cal's heartful testimony, had been broadcast to every corner of known space. For the first time, the Council was forced to confront the reality of the Varnak threat, and it showed in their uneasy expressions. Some members whispered urgently to one another, while others stared at the holographic displays of the weapon's design, their faces pale. Councillor Elena Vega stood at the center of the room, her usual composure faltering under the weight of the situation. She had pushed hard for humanity's ban, convinced that their unpredictability made them too dangerous to trust. But now, faced with undeniable proof of the Varnak's sinister plans, she struggled to reconcile her beliefs with the truth before her. "We must address this new information," she began, her voice quieter than usual. "If the Varnak truly pose a threat to the galaxy, we cannot ignore it." Counselor Aaron Solis seized the moment, stepping forward to speak. His shimmering blue skin seemed to glow brighter as he addressed the assembly. "This is not just about humanity anymore," he said firmly. "The Varnak's actions affect us all. If we continue to punish humans for defending themselves, we risk leaving the galaxy unprotected. Humanity may be unpredictable, but so is war, and sometimes unpredictability is our greatest strength." His words resonated with many in the room, particularly those who had once been undecided. Slowly, the tide began to shift. Maya Reynolds watched the proceedings from a viewing gallery above, her heart racing. She had spent days rallying support, using every channel available to spread awareness of the Varnak threat. Now, seeing the council waver, she felt a flicker of hope. "They're listening," she murmured to herself, gripping the railing tightly. But not everyone was convinced. A counselor representing a species allied with the Varnak rose to argue against the growing consensus. "This evidence is circumstantial," he insisted, his tone dismissive. "Even if the Varnak are building a weapon, it does not justify lifting the ban on humanity. Their methods are reckless. They will escalate the conflict, not resolve it." The argument reignited the debate, with voices rising and tempers flaring. Amidst the chaos, Maya couldn't stay silent any longer. She stepped into the chamber itself, defying protocol to address the council directly. Her presence drew gasps from some members, but she ignored them, focusing instead on the task at hand. "You speak of humanity's recklessness," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves coursing through her. "But what about courage? What about sacrifice? Humans have fought not just for themselves, but for others, for peace, for survival. You want to punish us for traits that could save the galaxy." Her words hung in the air, silencing even the most vocal opponents. Counselor Vega looked at Maya, her expression conflicted. Finally, she spoke. "Perhaps we were wrong," she admitted, her voice heavy with regret. "Perhaps banning humanity was a mistake. But the question remains, how do we move forward?" Before anyone could answer, Admiral Carter entered the chamber, flanked by General Liam Bennett and Nathan Hayes. Their arrival drew stunned stares from the counselors, but they didn't hesitate. Admiral Carter stepped forward, her demeanor commanding yet respectful. "Humanity doesn't seek revenge or dominance," she said. "We seek partnership. Together, we can stop the Varnak, not as enemies, but as allies." The room fell silent as the council absorbed her words. One by one, members began to nod in agreement. The ban on humanity would not be lifted entirely, but strict guidelines would replace it, ensuring accountability and cooperation. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As the session ended, Nathan glanced at Maya, who gave him a small, triumphant smile. They had done it. They had proven humanity's worth. But the fight wasn't over. The Varnak still loomed as a threat, and the galaxy needed leaders willing to stand together. For now, though, Nathan allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. Humanity had been tested, and they had risen to the challenge. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The ship hurtled through the darkness of space, its engines screaming as Jake pushed it to the limit. Behind them, the Varnak outpost burned, consumed by the chaos Cal had unleashed before sacrificing himself. Nathan sat in the cockpit, gripping the edge of his seat as he stared out at the fiery wreckage growing smaller in the distance. The mission was over, or so they thought. But deep down, they all knew the hardest part was yet to come. Emma worked furiously at a console in the back, analyzing the data they had retrieved. Her face lit up with each new discovery. "This is worse than we imagined," she said, her voice tense but excited. "The weapon isn't just powerful. It's designed to target entire star systems. If the Varnock finish building it, no one will be safe. Jake glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Then I guess we better make sure that doesn't happen, he said with forced confidence. Despite his bravado, the toll of their escape showed on his face. Dark circles under his eyes, sweat beading on his forehead. None of them had slept in what felt like days. Nathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His mind raced with questions. Would the council believe them? Could they act quickly enough to stop the Varnock? And what about Kel? The alien scientist had given everything to help them, and Nathan couldn't shake the weight of his sacrifice. He clenched his fists, vowing silently not to let it be in vain. As they approached Earth's orbit, Admiral Carter's voice crackled over the comm system. "Status report," she demanded, her tone sharp but laced with urgency. Nathan took a deep breath before responding. "We got the data," he said. "But the Varnock know we're onto them. They'll move fast now." "Understood," Carter replied. "Prepare for debriefing. We don't have much time." When they landed, the team was whisked away to a secure facility buried deep beneath Earth's surface. There, they met with General Liam Bennett and Admiral Carter, who listened intently as Emma presented her findings. Holographic projections of the weapon's schematics filled the room, showing its devastating potential. Even the hardened generals looked shaken. "This proves the Varnock are the real threat," Admiral Carter said, pacing the room. "But convincing the council won't be easy. They've already made up their minds about humanity." Maya Reynolds arrived shortly after, having been summoned for an emergency briefing. She listened quietly as the team recounted their mission, her expression shifting from disbelief to determination. When they finished, she stood up, her hands trembling slightly. "We can use this," she said firmly. "If we present the evidence publicly, the galaxy will see the truth. Humanity isn't the enemy, the Varnock are." General Bennett nodded. "It's risky, but it might work. If we leak the information to the right channels, we could force the council to reconsider." Emma interrupted, her voice urgent. "There's something else." She pulled up another file on the screen, a message recorded by Cale before they left. In it, the scientist explained the Varnock's plans in detail, condemning his own government's actions. "He wanted the galaxy to know," Emma said softly. "He gave his life for this." Maya watched the recording, her eyes shining with unused tears. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Cal's testimony adds credibility. People will listen." While the team worked on distributing the data, tensions mounted across the galaxy. News of the intercepted transmission spread quickly, sparking outrage among neutral species who had once supported the Council's ban. Protests erupted outside the Galactic Council's headquarters, with crowds chanting slogans like "Truth over Fear" and "Unite against the Varnock." Councilor Elena Vega watched the chaos unfold from her office, her face pale. She had believed banning humans was the safest choice, but now doubts crept into her mind. When she reviewed the evidence herself, she realized the scope of the danger they faced. The Varnock weren't just a regional threat. They were a galactic menace. Despite the growing pressure, some council members refused to budge. Even if the Varnock are planning something, humanity cannot be trusted to handle it, one argued. Their involvement will only make things worse. But others began to waver, swayed by the mounting proof and public outcry. For the first time, cracks appeared in the Council's united front. Maya seized the opportunity, writing impassioned articles and giving interviews to sway undecided members. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Back at the facility, Nathan and his team prepared for whatever came next. They had done their part, risking everything to expose the truth. Now it was up to the galaxy to decide, to stand together against a common enemy or let fear divide them. Whatever happened, Nathan knew one thing for certain. Humanity's story was far from over. The team moved carefully across the rocky surface of the moon, their footsteps muffled by the thin layer of dust underfoot. The Varnock outpost loomed ahead, its jagged edges cutting into the dark sky like the teeth of some ancient beast. Nathan led the group, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Emma followed close behind, clutching a small device that would help them bypass security systems. Jake brought up the rear, keeping watch for patrols or drones. As they approached the facility's outer wall, Emma knelt down and began working on the entrance. Her fingers moved quickly over the keypad she had attached to the door's control panel. "Give me a minute," she whispered, her voice barely audible even in the silence of the moon. Nathan glanced around nervously, his hand resting on the weapon strapped to his side. Every second felt like an eternity. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air. Jake froze, his head snapping toward the sound. "We've got company," he muttered, pointing to a pair of Varnock patrol drones gliding toward them. The machines were small but deadly, equipped with sensors and weapons capable of tearing through armor. "Keep working," Nathan said to Emma without taking his eyes off the drones. He raised his weapon, aiming carefully. Jake did the same, firing a quick burst to distract the machines. The drones turned toward the noise, giving Emma just enough time to finish her task. With a soft click, the door slid open. "Go," she hissed, scrambling inside. Nathan and Jake backed into the facility, keeping their weapons trained on the drones until the door sealed shut behind them. For a moment, they stood in silence, catching their breath. The interior of the outpost was dimly lit, the walls lined with strange symbols glowing faintly in the darkness. Emma pulled out her map again, studying it closely. "This way," she said, leading them down a narrow corridor. They passed rows of crates stacked high with supplies. Ammunition, spare parts, and other materials meant for war. It was clear the Varnock were preparing for something big. As they reached the second section of the facility, they encountered their first real obstacle: a group of Varnock soldiers guarding the entrance to the research labs. The aliens were tall and muscular, their armored bodies gleaming under the pale light. Nathan signaled for the team to stop, crouching behind a stack of crates. "We can't fight them directly," Emma whispered. "There are too many." Jake smirked, pulling a small device from his belt. "Leave this to me." He tossed the gadget, a smoke bomb, into the middle of the group. Thick clouds of gray smoke filled the air, disorienting the guards. While they stumbled around, coughing and shouting, the team slipped past unnoticed. Inside the research labs, they found what they were looking for: rows of computer terminals displaying schematics and data. Emma hurried to one of the screens, plugging in her hacking tool. "I need a few minutes," she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Nathan and Jake kept watch, peering through the glass walls for any signs of trouble. Just as Emma finished downloading the files, a new figure appeared in the doorway. It wasn't a soldier but a scientist, an alien with pale skin and wide, cautious eyes. He introduced himself as Kel, a rogue Varnock who opposed his government's plans. "You don't have much time," he warned. "They know you're here." Kale handed them a data chip containing additional information about the superweapon. "Take this," he urged. "It shows how dangerous it really is. But if you stay any longer, you won't make it out alive." Nathan hesitated, unsure whether to trust him, but something in Cal's tone convinced him. "Thank you," he said simply. As they prepared to leave, Cal stayed behind, knowing his betrayal wouldn't go unpunished. Back in the corridors, alarms blared, red lights flashing overhead. The team ran as fast as they could, dodging patrols and narrowly avoiding capture. When they finally reached the exit, Jake fired up the ship, engines roaring to life. Behind them, the outpost erupted in chaos, the result of Cal's final act of defiance. As they soared away from the moon, Nathan looked back at the burning facility. They had done it. They had the proof they needed. But the cost weighed heavily on all of them. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: humanity's fight was far from over. Nathan Hayes stood in a dimly lit room deep beneath the surface of Earth, surrounded by faces he barely knew but would soon trust with his life. General Liam Bennett paced back and forth, explaining the mission in sharp, clipped sentences. "We need proof," he said, pointing to a holographic map floating in the center of the table. The Varnok are building something, a weapon. If we can find it, expose it, we might have a chance to change the Council's mind. Admiral Carter stepped forward, her tone calm but firm. This isn't just about humanity anymore. The Varnok's plans could threaten the entire galaxy. We're not asking you to fight blindly. We're asking you to uncover the truth. She glanced at Nathan, then at the others gathered around the table. Emma Lewis, a strategist known for her quick thinking, and Jake Monroe, a daring pilot who had escaped death more times than anyone cared to count. The team listened intently as Admiral Carter outlined their target, a heavily guarded Varnok outpost on a remote moon. Intelligence suggested the facility housed blueprints or prototypes for a superweapon capable of wiping out entire planets. If they could infiltrate the base, retrieve the data, and escape alive, they might stand a chance of proving humanity's worth, not as reckless warriors, but as protectors of peace. Nathan felt a mix of fear and determination bubbling inside him. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, let alone leading such a dangerous mission. But he reminded himself why he was here, to ensure no one else suffered like the people of Haven 7. "What's the plan?" he asked, his voice steady despite the nerves gnawing at him. Emma took over, pulling up a detailed schematic of the outpost. "The facility is divided into 3 sections," she explained. "The first is storage, full of supplies and spare parts. The second houses research labs where they develop weapons. The third, and most secure, is the command center. That's where we'll find what we need." Jake leaned forward, his grin cocky but reassuring. "Getting in won't be easy, but I've flown through tighter spots. Once we land, we'll have to move fast. The longer we stay, the higher the risk of getting caught." General Bennett cut in, his tone serious. "And if you do get caught, there's no backup coming. You're on your own out there." His words hung heavy in the air, but no one flinched. They all knew the stakes. Before leaving, Nathan visited his family one last time. His younger sister, Claire, hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Promise me you'll come back," she whispered. Nathan forced a smile, though his heart ached. "I'll do my best," he said softly. The journey to the Varnok moon was long and tense. As their ship approached, the team reviewed their roles one final time. Emma double-checked the hacking tools they'd need to access the facility systems. Jake ran diagnostics on the ship, ensuring it could handle evasive maneuvers if necessary. Nathan sat quietly, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. He thought about Haven 7, about Alex, and about every person counting on them to succeed. When they arrived, the outpost loomed ahead, a jagged structure carved into the moon's rocky surface. It looked cold and lifeless, yet bristling with activity. Jake guided the ship into a narrow canyon, hiding it from view. "Time to earn our pay," he muttered as they prepared to disembark. As they stepped onto the alien terrain, Nathan felt the weight of the mission settle over him. Every step forward brought them closer to danger, but also closer to hope, for humanity, for the galaxy, and for a future where strength didn't mean destruction. Whatever happened next, they were ready. The day of the Galactic Council's final vote arrived, and the atmosphere was tense. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in a massive chamber, its walls lined with glowing symbols that shifted colors depending on the mood of the room. At the center stood Counselor Elena Vega, her expression calm but resolute as she prepared to present her case one last time. The decision they were about to make would shape the future of humanity, and perhaps the galaxy itself. Elena began by showing recordings of past battles where humans had played key roles. She highlighted moments of destruction caused not just to enemies, but also to neutral parties caught in the crossfire. "Humanity fights without restraint," she said, her voice steady. "Their methods are unpredictable, their actions driven by emotion rather than logic. Allowing them to continue participating in wars risks destabilizing peace across the stars." Her words stirred murmurs among the council members. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Counselor Aaron Solis, The blue-skinned alien who had previously opposed Alina's proposal rose to speak. "Yes, humanity is unpredictable," he admitted. "But unpredictability can be a strength as much as a weakness. Their courage and creativity have saved lives before. Should we punish them for traits that could also serve the greater good?" The debate continued for hours, with arguments flying back and forth. Meanwhile, on Earth, millions watched the proceedings through live broadcasts, holding their breath as the fate of their species hung in the balance. Maya Reynolds sat in her small apartment, glued to the screen, her heart racing. She had done everything she could to sway public opinion, but now it was out of her hands. The council's decision would come down to a single vote. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the moment arrived. Each representative cast their vote silently, their choices displayed as shimmering lights above their heads, green for approval of the ban, red for opposition. When the results appeared, the chamber fell silent. The motion had passed. Humanity was officially banned from participating in any form of warfare. Alina stepped forward once more, addressing not only the council, but also the billions watching across the galaxy. "This is not a punishment," she said firmly. "It is a measure to preserve peace. Humans will no longer be allowed to maintain standing armies or engage in combat operations. If these terms are violated, sanctions will follow, including economic blockades and isolation from trade routes." The news hit Earth like a storm. Protests erupted immediately, with crowds shouting slogans like "freedom or nothing" and "no surrender." General Liam Bennett watched the chaos unfold from his office, his face grim. He had known this outcome was likely, but hearing it confirmed still stung. Turning to Admiral Carter, who stood beside him, he asked, "What now?" Admiral Carter didn't hesitate. "We prepare," she said simply. "If the council thinks this will stop us, they're wrong. We'll find another way." Meanwhile, Nathan Hayes received a message summoning him to a secret meeting. Still recovering on the peaceful moon, he was surprised and slightly nervous when soldiers arrived to escort him to Earth. When he finally met General Liam Bennett and Admiral Carter in person, they explained their plan. A covert mission to gather evidence proving the Varnock posed a greater threat to the galaxy than anyone realized. If successful, they could expose the Council's mistake and force them to reconsider. Nathan listened intently, his mind racing. This wasn't just about saving humanity. It was about protecting the entire galaxy. Though fear lingered in the back of his mind, he nodded. "I'm in," he said quietly but firmly. As preparations began, Maya Reynolds worked tirelessly to keep hope alive among the people. Through articles and speeches, she reminded everyone that humanity's fight wasn't over. "They can ban our armies," she wrote, "but they can't ban our spirit. We will adapt, we will endure, and we will prove them wrong." For now, humanity faced uncertainty. But deep down, many believed that even in the darkest times, resilience and determination would guide them forward. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The protests on Earth grew louder with each passing day. Crowds gathered in city squares, holding signs that read "Freedom to Defend" and "No Ban on Humanity." Among the loudest voices was Maya Reynolds, whose articles had ignited a firestorm of resistance. She traveled from one colony to another, speaking at rallies and urging people not to give in to the Council's demands. "We didn't come this far just to bow down to fear," she told a cheering crowd on Mars. "If we let them take away our right to protect ourselves, what's next? Will they tell us where we can live, how we should think?" Her words struck a chord, especially among those who had lost loved ones in conflicts like the one at Haven 7. Families of fallen soldiers joined the movement, sharing their stories to remind everyone why fighting back mattered. But not all humans agreed. Some believed complying with the Council's demands was the safer choice. They argued that resisting could lead to sanctions, economic blockades, isolation from trade routes, or even military intervention by other species. These fears created division, pitting neighbor against neighbor as debates raged in homes, workplaces, and online forums. Amidst the chaos, General Liam Bennett worked behind the scenes. From his headquarters, deep beneath the surface of Earth, he assembled a team of trusted advisors to explore options. He knew outright defiance would be risky, but surrendering wasn't an option either. The Council's ban would leave humanity defenseless, making colonies like Haven 7 easy targets for enemies like the Varnock. Something had to be done, and quickly. One evening, as Liam sat in his office reviewing intelligence reports, Admiral Carter arrived unannounced. Her expression was grim, her shoulders weighed down by responsibility. "Liam," she began, taking a seat across from him. "If the Council enforces this ban, it won't stop at disbanding our armies. They'll demand oversight, inspectors, observers. We'll lose control of our own forces." Liam nodded, his jaw tightening. "And if we refuse?" "We prepare for war," she said bluntly. "Not just with the Varnock, but possibly with the Council itself. That's why I came here, to warn you. If we're going to resist, we need a plan. One that shows the galaxy we're not reckless warmongers, but capable allies." For hours, they discussed strategies. Admiral Carter suggested using Nathan Hayes as a symbol, a young soldier who had shown both bravery and restraint during the battle at Haven 7. His story could humanize their cause, proving that humanity wasn't defined solely by its wrath. Liam agreed, seeing potential in the idea. Together, they decided to bring Nathan into the fold, along with a small group of skilled operatives who could execute a daring mission. Meanwhile, Maya continued her campaign, unaware of the secret plans brewing in military circles. She focused her efforts on swaying undecided members of the Galactic Council, particularly those from neutral species who hadn't yet taken a firm stance. Through interviews and diplomatic channels, she highlighted humanity's contributions to galactic progress, medical breakthroughs, technological innovations, and cultural exchanges. Slowly but surely, she began to chip away at the Council's resolve. Back in space, Nathan Hayes remained unaware of how much attention he was receiving. After surviving the horrors of Haven 7, he'd been sent to a recovery center on a peaceful moon. Doctors treated his wounds, but the scars inside ran deeper. Nightmares plagued him, replaying moments when friends had died, and when he'd made impossible choices. Despite everything, though, he couldn't shake the feeling that his fight wasn't over. Little did he know, fate had bigger plans for him. As days turned into weeks, tensions between humanity and the Galactic Council reached a boiling point. The Council scheduled a final vote on the ban, leaving Earth and its colonies scrambling to respond. For Liam, Maya, and Admiral Carter, time was running out. Whatever happened next would determine whether humanity stood tall among the stars or faded into obscurity. The news of the attack on Haven 7 spread quickly, carried by hyperwave transmissions that reached every corner of the galaxy. The images were haunting: burned-out buildings, destroyed ships, and frightened survivors clutching what little they had left. For many civilizations, it was a grim reminder of how dangerous the universe could be. But for the Galactic Council, a powerful governing body made up of representatives from dozens of species, it was something more: proof of humanity's unpredictability. Counselor Elena Vega sat in her office, staring at a holographic screen displaying reports about the battle. A tall, stern woman with sharp features, she had spent decades working to maintain peace among the stars. To her, humanity's actions during the fight at Haven 7 were troubling. They hadn't surrendered when faced with overwhelming odds. Instead, they had fought back with ferocity, using unconventional tactics to inflict heavy losses on the Varnock forces. While some might call it bravery, Elena saw it as recklessness, a threat to the fragile balance she worked so hard to uphold. She called an emergency meeting of the Council, gathering its members in a grand chamber filled with glowing symbols and floating displays. As representatives from various species took their seats, Elena stood at the center, her voice calm but firm. "We cannot ignore what happened at Haven 7, she began. "Humanity has shown us time and again they are capable of immense destruction. Their refusal to back down, even when outnumbered, puts not only themselves but others at risk. Elena went on to recount past conflicts where humans had played a role. She spoke of a war years earlier, when a human fleet had dismantled an enemy armada 3 times its size using clever strategies no one had anticipated. While the victory had been celebrated then, it had also caused collateral damage, harming neutral parties caught in the crossfire. They are unpredictable, Elena continued, and unpredictability breeds chaos. If we allow them to continue participating in wars, we risk destabilizing the entire galaxy. Her words sparked heated debate. Some counselors agreed with her, particularly those from species that had clashed with humans before. Others argued that humanity deserved the right to defend itself, especially since the Varnak had attacked first. Among the dissenters was Counselor Aaron Solis, a soft-spoken alien with shimmering blue skin. "You speak of banning humans from war," he said, addressing Elena. "But do you truly believe such a measure will stop them? History shows they will fight regardless of your rules. Perhaps instead of punishing them, we should seek to understand them." Despite these objections, Elena pressed forward with her proposal. She drafted a resolution to outlaw humans from participating in any form of warfare, arguing that it was the only way to ensure galactic stability. Her motion gained traction, supported by several influential counselors who feared humanity's growing reputation. Word of the proposed ban soon reached Earth, sparking outrage among its people. Back on Earth, Maya Reynolds, a journalist known for her bold reporting, wasted no time covering the story. With fiery determination, she wrote article after article criticizing the Council's decision. In one piece, she described humanity's struggles to survive in a hostile universe, pointing out that forbidding them from defending themselves would leave them vulnerable to attacks like the one on Haven 7. "Are we to stand idly by while our enemies grow stronger?" she asked her readers. "Or will we fight for our right to exist?" Maya's words resonated with many. Protests erupted across Earth and its colonies, with citizens demanding that their leaders resist the Council's demands. Meanwhile, General Liam Bennett, a seasoned military officer, began quietly preparing for the worst. He gathered trusted allies, including high-ranking officers and strategists, to discuss contingency plans. If the Council enforced the ban, humanity would need to decide whether to comply or defy them entirely. As tensions mounted, Admiral Carter, who had observed Nathan's heroics during the battle, found herself caught between 2 worlds. On one hand, she understood the Council's concerns. Humanity's methods were often brutal and unorthodox. On the other hand, she couldn't deny the courage and resourcefulness displayed by soldiers like Nathan Hayes. Whatever decision lay ahead, she knew it would shape the future of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, for generations to come. In a distant future, humanity had spread its reach far beyond Earth, colonizing planets scattered across the galaxy. These colonies thrived, each one unique yet united by their shared human spirit. But peace was fragile, and danger always lingered in the vastness of space. On a small, quiet colony called Haven 7, life seemed simple for Nathan Hayes. He wasn't a scientist or an engineer. He was just a soldier doing his duty, protecting the people who called this remote planet home. Haven 7 was located near the edge of known space, close to territories claimed by the Varnak, a fierce alien species known for their aggression. The humans on Haven 7 tried to live peacefully, avoiding any conflict with their neighbors. For years, it worked. Trade routes were established, and both sides kept their distance. But tensions began to rise when rumors spread about the Varnak building massive fleets near human borders. No one knew why they were preparing, but everyone felt uneasy. One evening, as the twin suns of Haven 7 dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the settlement, alarms blared through the air. Nathan rushed to his post, heart pounding. Reports flooded in. Varnak ships had crossed into human territory and were heading straight for Haven 7. Panic rippled through the colony as families scrambled to find shelter. Nathan's commanding officer, Captain Laura Drake, gave quick orders. We don't know what they want, but we'll defend ourselves if we have to. The Varnock fleet loomed larger than anything Nathan had ever seen. Their ships were jagged and dark, like shards of broken glass against the night sky. When the first wave of attackers descended, Nathan realized this wasn't just a raid, it was an invasion. The Varnock moved with precision, overwhelming the colony's defenses within minutes. Nathan and his squad fought back fiercely, using every weapon at their disposal. They set traps, fired rockets, and even resorted to hand-to-hand combat when necessary. Every second felt like an eternity. Despite their efforts, the humans were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, Nathan's comrades fell. His best friend, Alex Carter, was hit by enemy fire while trying to protect a group of civilians. Nathan froze for a moment, grief washing over him, but he forced himself to keep moving. Giving up meant letting the Varnock win, and that wasn't an option. He rallied the remaining soldiers, leading them in a desperate counterattack. Using makeshift explosives and clever tactics, they managed to destroy several Varnock dropships, buying precious time for survivors to escape. As the battle raged on, Admiral Carter, stationed aboard a nearby command ship, watched the chaos unfold. Through surveillance drones, she saw Nathan's bravery firsthand. Though young and inexperienced, he showed incredible leadership under pressure. She made a mental note of his name, knowing that soldiers like him could change the course of history if given the chance. By dawn, the fight was over. The Varnock had taken control of Haven 7, leaving behind smoldering ruins and shattered lives. Nathan stood amidst the wreckage, battered but alive. His uniform was torn, his body ached, and his mind reeled from everything he'd witnessed. Yet, deep down, he felt a spark of defiance. This defeat wouldn't be the end. It couldn't be. Unbeknownst to Nathan, news of the battle reached far beyond Haven 7. Across the galaxy, governments and leaders debated what to do about humanity's growing reputation for resilience and wrath. Some admired their courage, while others feared it. Little did Nathan know, his actions during this brutal fight would soon become part of a much larger story, one that would shape the fate of not only humanity but the entire galaxy.